Your rookie draft is coming up. You got to pick in the middle of the first round, but what is that worth in Dynasty right now? We're going to look at some real life trades for picks 5 through 8. But first, let me remind you that if you want to join us on flockfantasy.com/endgame, you'll get access to our Dynasty rankings all preseason long, and you get to join us in mock drafts, including Dynasty drafts. You'll be the first to get the link to join us on a live stream. Also, access to all our other Discord channels, bonus articles, bonus videos, and access not just to us, but some of the best content creators on YouTube. 30% off with any subscription if you join right now. That's flockfantasy.com/endgame. Now we're going to start with the 1.5. We did already cover picks 1 through 4. What do you do if you're picking early in the draft? So don't forget to check that video out once you're done here. But you're at the 1.5. You got some tempting offers sitting in your inbox. Let's start with the first one, Chris. Now this one, I gotta admit, I'm a little torn. Talking about Drake London straight up for the chance to pick possibly a young receiver in his place.
Yeah, I mean, you could pick a young receiver or you could take a young receiver like Drake London. I'm going Drake London here. I don't feel like I think I like this wide receiver class more than most people, but I don't feel like there's any wide receiver in this class that's going to be that has a potential to be a true, wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I think we're going to have a lot of really good wide receiver 2s, some high upside wide receivers 2s. I think Drake London at least has the potential to eventually be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So I'm going to take that potential. I'm going to move off the 105 here and go with Drake London.
Now, one thing to point out, and it's going to vary from trade to trade, but of course, different types of formats for fantasy. This is indicated there, 2 quarterback league or super flex. So that means that in the beginning of this draft, you would assume in the rookie draft, you're going to see at least 1 or 2 quarterbacks taken. But still, at the 5th pick, that means you're going to be left maybe with a number 1 or number 2 receiver. You got to assume, again, maybe 2 quarterbacks. Bijan gets taken. I mean, Drake London was the top receiver taken in last year's draft. So are we sure there's a guy who's at his level? I mean, if you love like Quentin Johnston or somebody else and you're convinced they're going to be better and have a higher ceiling, I guess you could do that, but I'm not doing that. I know Atlanta's quarterback situation isn't great, but it doesn't mean that whoever else you're taking in his place will be any better. All right, now a pick swap here. This looks like a classic case of win now or win later. The 1.5 for this year or 2 picks for the 24 draft, a round 1 and a round 2 pick.
Yeah, these are always tough to gauge because you don't really know where that 24 first will be. I mean, unless you're just certain that the player you're getting that 24 first from is going to have a terrible team this year and, will be a bottom 5 player in your league and you'll get a top 5 pick. You just never know how these things work out. I remember a couple years back when we started our Endgame Dynasty League, coming out of the startup draft, everybody thought my team was one of the best teams, and then nothing broke my way, and I finished like second to last, so whoever got my first round pick was doing cartwheels. So you never know. I'm just going to go ahead and keep the top 5 pick this year and not gamble on next year maybe being a late first and then really regretting it.
On this one, I'm actually going to go the other way. Now, I will say it always depends, right, on your roster makeup and where your situation is. If your team is basically already built to win right now and you don't need a guy who can be an instant impact, player, somebody you can slot in a starting lineup, then maybe you just keep the pick. But at this point, look, unless there's a guy you really love, and I don't really feel that way about anybody right now who I think I'm getting at the 5 spot. And again, this one now, if you notice, single quarterback league. So you're not going to see, most likely, more than 1, if any, quarterbacks taken before you. So you're getting your pick of maybe the 2nd running back off the board, maybe the 3rd receiver. Give me the guy who I could get next year, my first round pick, and an additional asset. Because even if you say, well, what are you getting in round 2 next year? I don't know, but that's another asset, something else I can tuck away and use for a trade, use to collect more players next year. So to me, I actually would rather take the 2nd pick. All right, now this one will definitely draw a lot of varying opinions, but probably not between us. Probably on the same page here. The 1.5 or Javonte Williams.
I'm definitely going the 105 here, and it is a 1 QB league, but still, I I've talked about Javonte Williams a lot. I feel like this year is going to be a completely lost year. And there's a chance he gets replaced this year by another younger running back because we got a whole new staff in Denver. This is a team trying to win right now. You got Russell Wilson on a massive contract. You've got a great defense. This isn't a team looking to the future. So there's no guarantee Javonte is even the guy going into 2024. I feel like at the 105, even in a 1 QB league, I can get at least a Javonte replacement at running back, if not a wide receiver. I'm keeping the pick.
Couldn't agree more. Look, I'll just say, jumping ahead a little bit maybe, if it was Javonte for the 1-6, the 1-7, the 1-8, the 1, I wouldn't do it. I don't think he's worth a first-round pick. You're talking about an injured running back, a running back who isn't, sure to inherit his starting job when he comes back. There's no way. I'm sorry. Running backs are risky enough in Dynasty, much less a guy under a new coach who just tore multiple ligaments. No way I'm taking Javonte. Let's move on to the 6th pick. If you have the 1-6, and this is a 2-quarterback or super flex league, would you rather have that pick or Deshaun Watson?
Is this how low we've gotten on Deshaun Watson in Dynasty after, 5 or 6 terrible games that when he hadn't played in 2 years and he was on a new team with a new coach with a new system? I'm taking Deshaun Watson easily here. Even if you told me at the 106 I could get Anthony Richardson, I'm still taking Deshaun Watson. This guy was a top 5 QB every year in Houston outside of his rookie year. I feel like he's going to have a big bounce back. He's still very young. I'm taking Deshaun Watson.
Definitely Deshaun Watson. If we're talking about the number 1 or 2 overall pick, then I might balk. But in a league where you're starting more than one quarterback, they're so valuable. And this guy, despite whatever you say about how he did last year, about what you think of him, is rock solid. Usually pretty dependable in terms of being on the field, putting up numbers. Yeah, you cannot diminish Watson's value in fantasy any lower than this. All right, now we got a combo deal here. The 6th pick for the 9th, plus Rashad Bateman thrown in there.
I'm going with the double side here, the 109 and Bateman. I'm moving off the 6th pick here. And look, Bateman is very risky, and he's going down the path of a guy who could be one of those guys we always talk about, like, man, the potential is there. He's so good. He just needs things to break right. He just needs to stay healthy. Plenty of those guys have come, in and out of the NFL over the years. He's going down that path, but you're only moving down 3 spots here. And like I said earlier, I do like this wide receiver class, but I don't feel like necessarily, there's going to be a 1 or 2 guys that are just absolute studs that you wish you got. So for me, moving back 3 spots, I don't think it's too big of a hit. And you at least can get Bateman on your team and hope it works out.
Yeah, you're moving down, 3 spots. I mean, it's worth it. Find out. Kind of like I always said with future picks, you collect that asset. Maybe it turns into nothing, but what did you really lose? Again, the middle part of the first round of the draft is where the risk starts. Let's be real. First round, there's not a lot of just bulletproof players that you're going to pick. So I am a little worried more about Bateman than I was, not because Odell Beckham's there, but because Lamar Jackson specifically asked, in order to stay in Baltimore, he wanted, like Odell Beckham and DeAndre Hopkins, he wanted 2 big-name receivers coming to Baltimore, which makes me think he's not that thrilled with what they got there, and he didn't say anything about Bateman. So I'm not too worried, but at the same time, look, I'll find out. I'll take a chance. Get that player. He's young. Maybe he gets dealt to another team. Who knows? Still some years ahead of him. All right, here's where it gets interesting. We got a team willing to move Breece Hall and the 1-6 for Justin Herbert. Keep in mind, this is also the 2 QB / super flex league. What do you think?
Man, this is a monster trade. Obviously, if it was 1 QB, I'm taking the pick and Breece Hall all day. But this is 2 QB Superflex. I mean, Justin Herbert, a very young, very good QB. And I think we're going to see the best Justin Herbert we've ever seen this year because no more Joe Lombardi. I think they're going to open up this offense, more vertical passing, more down the field passing. I know Breece Hall is great, but he's coming off ACL tear. He's still a running back. We already talked about it at the 1.06. No guarantee you get a QB there. And I feel like there's not really going to be an elite player in that spot. So as hard as it would be for me, I think I got to go with the quarterback here because it is super flex. I'm going Justin Herbert.
I hate to say this, but it really depends, right? It depends on your roster. I mean, if you already have 2 solid quarterbacks, it would hard to be say, well, you know what? Justin Herbert, I know that you're find a place for him. Obviously, you start him, you trade somebody else. You can never have too many quarterbacks, but and you get Breece Hall, who even if he's not going to be great this year, he could be a future RB1 for years to come, at least a few. And then you can get another maybe weekly starter here. And since it's a two-quarterback league, again, you're going to see probably Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, maybe Anthony Richardson taken, and then of course Bijan. You get to have one of those top receivers to go along with a Breece Hall. So I'd say if you somehow are a good young team that happens to have two good quarterbacks, I think I might keep Hall in the 1-6. But if you want Herbert to just jump in there and he's your QB1 because your quarterback situation isn't the best, you should probably go for Herbert. Down to lucky number 7 here. Would you rather have that 7th pick or George Kittle plus David Montgomery?
Oh, this is actually tough because I'm probably not as high on David Montgomery and George Kittle as a lot of people in Dynasty. I mean, David Montgomery, a solid running back. Maybe his his offensive line is better, but he probably won't get as many touches as he got in Chicago with DeAndre Swift there. George Kittle, I think he's going to be 29 this year, which, isn't the kiss of death for tight ends, but it's getting up there. And he's obvious. I don't think he was as good last year as people remember just because he had a couple of monster games in the fantasy playoffs. But at the 107, we've already talked about it. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get an elite player here, so for me, I think I'd rather have the depth of a solid RB2 and a solid tight end 1, maybe even a high-end tight end 1. So I would probably move off the pick here for these players.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to take the players here. Monty, at this point, we know, even in Detroit, with the potential of those touchdowns that he's going to inherit from Jamal Williams, not going to be an RB1, probably ever, at least not a fantasy RB1. But he's a solid RB2. And he still has a couple of years in him. George Kittle, not as young as he used to be, but tight ends can play for a while. In that offense, you got solid producers at two positions versus a rookie that, let's face it, no matter who it is that you get there at the 7th overall pick, you have no idea how his career will turn out. So give me the sure thing. These guys aren't ancient. I know so many people get wrapped up in youth and give me the young player, give me the upside. But why take the risk when you know what you're getting? All right, here we go. Straight up. Is J.K. Dobbins worth the 1-7?
He is for me. Somebody wants to give me J.K. Dobbins for my 107. I will gladly take him. I've talked about J.K. Dobbins a lot. I think he's going to have a great year this year. Should be fully healthy from that ACL. Looked great down the stretch when he wasn't even 100% yet. It sounds like Lamar is still going to be the quarterback. I don't think this team's all of a sudden going to throw the ball 35 plus times a game. They're still going to rely on the running game. Dobbins is one of those guys who can rip off long runs. And like you said, at the 107, what running back are you going to get here that's better than Dobbins? Probably nobody. What wide receiver? Probably nobody. And Dobbins still only 24 years old. Doesn't even turn 25 till December. I'm taking Dobbins.
Yep. I mean, you got to think about it. And this is a 1 QB league, but out of the running backs who are left, how many running backs do you feel great about after the first 2 or 3 are taken? Could they be as good as J.K. Dobbins? I don't think so. There's not anybody who even jumps to mind that I would say I'd rather have than Dobbins for sure. Like you said, he's only 24. I'll take the player over the pick. All right, maybe this will tempt you. The 1.7 or Terry McLaurin.
Nah, here I'm keeping the pick. I know, like you see Terry McLaurin, and it looks nice. But what has Terry McLaurin ever really done in fantasy? I mean, let's be honest. I like Terry McLaurin a lot. He's a great player. But he's never been really more than like a solid wide receiver 2 with some weekly upside in fantasy. He's never been like this stud, wide receiver 1 that can carry your team week in and week out. And he's also 28. I don't think people realize that because he came into the league so late. He's 28 years old. And look, wide receivers can produce, into their 30s. But still, for a guy like Terry McLaurin, I'd rather just take a rookie who might be just as good as Terry McLaurin, at least in terms of fantasy. So I'm going to go younger here. I'm going to keep the pick in this case.
Well, maybe I just hate rookie picks, but I'm going to take the player here again too, and Terry McLaurin. And here's the thing. I know there's concern, obviously, with Sam Howell at quarterback. That's a question, if not a concern. Dotson is there. He looked really good. He might kind of take over the number 1 role. But McLaurin is still a steady producer. Maybe I'm just too skeptical of rookies in the first place because so many guys come in that we think they're going to do this in the league, they're going to do that, and they just don't. So I would rather have a guy I know can do it, also cling on to his upside. All right, now let's say you're at the 1.8. Here's another interesting deal here. I really wonder what's going on in the mind of these people. Again, these are real trades that have gone on in Dynasty Draft. So what about pick 1.8 and Kadarius Toney for that man Javonte Williams again and the 2.4?
I'm definitely keeping the pick here. Like you said earlier, I don't think Javonte alone is even worth the 1.08. I'd rather just keep the 1.08. And that second round pick, I'd rather gamble on Kadarius Toney. He's young, he has potential, he has upside. Maybe he'll also be one of these guys like Rashad Bateman that we say, man, if he could just stay healthy, and he never stays healthy. But I'll gamble on him, and I'll gamble on whoever I get at the 108. Just have no confidence in Javonte long term. Maybe it'll bite me. Maybe he'll somehow, bounce back this year, be great, and be the guy. But for right now, I'm keeping the pick in Toney.
Yeah, I already said earlier, Javonte's not worth a first-round pick for me. And even if you say the 2.4 versus Toney, again, give me the player, because in Dynasty, and I've never been a huge Kadarius Toney fan, I'm still very skeptical. We did see flashes. At least you have that potential weekly upside with a player versus a second-round pick that you don't even know he's going to stay in the league. So I'll take the 1.8 and Toney. All right, now time for a heat check. And by that I mean, how high are we on the Sun God in Dynasty? Is he worth the 1.8 and Wan'Dale Robinson?
For me, he is. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson coming off ACL, probably going to be pretty close to a lost season this year, and he could be replaced at any time. The 108, already talked about it. Like, these wide receivers, I think, will be good, but no true, wide receiver one. We've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown can be a wide receiver one. I'm going to go ahead and let go of Wan'Dale and the pick here and just take the Sun God.
Give me the Sun God for sure here. You said it, Wan'Dale Robinson. I liked Wan'Dale a lot going into last season, but torn ACL, that not just rules out this season, but also, got to keep in mind, the Giants have made a lot of moves this offseason at receiver and tight end. Plus, Daniel Jones is still the quarterback there. Let's just face it. So really just a throw in here. Am I going to take a first round pick for the Sun God? Yeah, I would have the Sun God here because it would have to be a top 4 pick in a super flex league for me to move away from St. Brown. All right, let's end with a doozy here. This is a single quarterback league. Keep this in mind. So Dak Prescott and the 1.8 in exchange for Kyler Murray, Cam Akers, and the 2.2.
Well, I know this is going to test you because I know you're really high on Cam Akers and not really high on Kyler Murray, but I'm going to go ahead and trade Prescott in the pick for Murray, Akers, and I guess second round pick. Not that I don't like Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott is great. I think he's severely undervalued in all formats. But when Kyler Murray is healthy, I don't think there's a big difference between him and Dak Prescott. And sure, maybe you don't get a healthy Kyler Murray this year, or at least not till the end of the year, but eventually you do, and he's still very young. I really like Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers is worth more than the 1.08. Not even 24 years old yet. Looked pretty good last year, so I'd rather have him over the 108. And then you get a second round pick in. I'm going to take the side with Murray, Akers, and the second round pick.
You're right, this is a tough one for me. But to me, I always look at what's the major component of this trade, and it's the quarterbacks. Give me Dak and the 1.8 because you're right. I'm down on Murray, and I'm just getting more and more down on him as things go on, as we hear more. I mean, I really don't have a lot of confidence in long term. I'd rather take Dak, even though he's a little bit older. And that first round pick, even though I like Akers, realistically, I realize this is a running back who did tear his Achilles. And the Rams, we don't really know what they're going to look like this year. So give me that first round pick. Give me that younger running back that I can kind of grow with in my dynasty team. And look, I like to win now if possible. Kyler Murray will not help my team win this year at all, even if he does play. So give me Prescott, and whoever I can pick at the 1.8, I can put him in my lineup and probably be just as productive as Cam Akers. We just broke down the middle of the rookie draft for you. If you didn't see the first part where we talk about picks 1 through 4, go check it out right now.